It's Charter California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Mike Ramos. He is the district attorney for San Bernardino County, running for re-election. That re-election will be held in June 2014. And so I want to speak with you about a case that actually is very close to you.
Yes.
You graduated from Redlands High School, I believe, in 1976.
That's correct.
In 1977, Paula Hernandez was a sophomore.
Yes.
You didn't know her, but
not.
your high school.
Right.
On March 22nd, 1977, her life came to an end.
Yes.
How?
It was horrific. She was murdered. She was walking home from school, like any of us, you know, leaving high school as sophomores.
You know the neighborhood, I presume.
Do know the neighborhood very well. Along the streets that kind of goes next to, close to the University.
Yeah,
of
I was going to
Redlands,
ask, right.
In a park. And then back in those days, especially, we had a ton of orange groves in Redlands, California. It was a citrus home, for lack of a better term. And she took a route that she was walking home from school that she normally wouldn't take, but she was avoiding these other construction guys who were building a building, and they were doing like cat calls at her.
The irony.
She just didn't want to be around them, so she took an alternate route through the groves. The same orange groves were a few years before a woman had been raped in there. A U of R student had been raped
I didn't know
in
that.
there,
okay.
And some other crimes that occurred. And because of that, this murderer, who was in the groves at the time, was having his own issues, ended up raping and murdering her.
His name, John Zink.
John Zink.
20 years old at the time.
Yes.
He was married. Allegedly, he was having marital problems.
Correct.
He had been part of an abusive family as a child.
Yeah.
Ultimately, he was convicted of the rape and murder.
Yes.
In 1977, there was no death penalty. We know that era.
Right.
He was given a life sentence with the possibility of parole.
Right.
Not without. Query whether he has repented. I don't know the facts.
Yeah.
At this stage, he has admitted to his crime.
Right.
And he claims that he is repentant. He claims he has become a devout Christian, and he is seeking release, parole.
Sure.
Talk to us about that process.
That's a huge issue, and you know, it's taken him over 30 years to finally be remorseful. I recall before I was elected, I was a deputy district attorney, and I was on the school board in Redlands, and Paula's family contacted me and said, look, it's been 25 years and he's going to finally go to a parole hearing.
Right.
He's never been. We're going by ourselves. We don't know what to do.
How did you know them?
They knew me as a community member.
And
so
school board
me,
also.
School board, they called me at work. I didn't know them. So I sat down, I met with them at lunch, I believe it was, and I heard their story, and I went to my boss at the time, and we didn't have a life or parole unit. He said, well, we'll write a letter, it'll be fine. No. So I took a day off. I took vacation time. I studied the case, and I drove to Corcoran State Prison, met the family in the parking lot.
And that's in Blythe, is that right?
Yeah. Yes, out there. And we sat there, and he came in, and he was not remorseful. He turned and half apologized, but then at the same breath he was saying, I want more DNA tests, I didn't do this, I didn't rape her, etc. It was, of course, the sister and the mother, Helen, they're sitting there crying. You know, they lost their daughter, and here's a guy that comes in, he hadn't done anything in prison to help himself rehabilitate, zero. So when I was elected DA, because of Paula Hernandez, I created the Life or Parole Unit.
Tell us about it.
The Life or Parole Unit now consists of veteran prosecutors. Jennifer Dawson is the main prosecutor. She does an excellent job. If there's a lifer hearing and we know that family's going to attend, we will be there for them.
Oh, really?
Yes, and sometimes we can do it on video. A lot of the prisons don't have that equipment, or it's not well put in place yet. So we go all over the state to be there with the families, supporting them in when they go up to the parole hearings.
And what makes this case so messy is that apparently there was some misdeeds conducted by the state psychiatrists.
Right.
And so some reports had to be removed.
Right.
it just complicates the case.
It complicated the case, and I don't know why they had to make up whatever they did, the psychiatrist, about this individual. He's a cold-blooded murderer. I mean, we talked about it, but not really the detail of the facts. He was sitting there that in 1977 when he killed her. He had been drinking in a bar. He had been upset because with his wife, and he brutally rapes Paula and starts to strangle her, and she fights back. I mean, she hits him, and he grabs her and throws her down and hits her head on a piece of concrete in Groves, and then buries her right there. So this man has never admitted that until now. Recently, he's figuring out, look, I know the game now. If I admit it and I say these things, I may get a chance on parole because of the California Supreme Court and Governor Brown.
And let's talk about that. It's very tricky. Governor Brown, as you know, is under federal court order.
Huge pressure.
To decrease the size of the prison population based upon a case from the U.S. Supreme Court from 2011. He has made it very clear that he is not interested in releasing prisoners early, whatever that means.
It's true.
And he has been able, miraculously, some would say, to get an extension of time to get that prison population down. But as part of the plan, he has agreed that he will look to release prisoners that are older, infirm, and so query whether John Zink would fall into that category. He was 20 when this happened. It's been, what, 35 years? Is that right? So that means he's 55. Doesn't seem that old to me.
No, not to me.
56. Exactly.
So, and here's the issue. He's not that old. If you look at his picture, he's lifting weights, he's got tattoos, and it's so important to me. And I'll say this about the governor. He said, if there's somebody on parole that you don't want paroled, come see me. I went to see the governor last week.
Oh, you did?
I did. Well, I had some issues, but this one-on-one issue I had with him, and I explained to him the details. His staff was there. They wrote the name down. They're going to take a real close look
because
at this.
What our viewers may not know is the parole board can issue its recommendation. The governor has
the right to override the parole board.
And it's happened.
It has happened. Now, the parole board, he has a parole hearing that's coming up. They haven't said they're going to release him yet. But I just want to make sure the governor knows ahead of time just what the impact was, not only to Paula's family, but the entire community of Redlands.
What would you say, though? I mean, look, it's easy to want to keep every murderer behind bars. That's easy. At some point, someone is entitled to parole.
I would say those that commit murder with the intent and premeditation in a case like this, where you rape your victim, where you brutally murder them, they should never get out of prison. That's not the case. If you have a manslaughter or a heat of passion murder, you show that you've changed your, and it was a one-time issue, I get that, but not in this situation.
Talk to us about any upcoming hearing. What was the woman's name that you said, Jennifer?
Jennifer Dawson's my lawyer. She will attend the next hearing.
And what will happen?
What happens is he comes in, he has an attorney, and there's the parole board consisting of 2 or 3 members, and they'll talk about all the things he's done, and he'll talk about that he's remorseful. Our family members, for Paula's family, will be sitting there with my lawyer, and my lawyer will have all the facts, all its prison files, what he's accomplished, what he hasn't accomplished, and then we can talk about the facts of the case again and the danger to the community if he is released.
And you believe that this man, 35 years later, remains a danger?
I do.
Explain.
He's a manipulative. He denied any of this until he figured out the way to get out is to admit all of this. He continues to, if you take a look at him, I mean, he looks scary. Look at his picture. I mean, he's buffed out, lifting weights, tattoo. I'm telling you, anybody that can take the life of a 15-year-old and deny it for over 30 years, that's a scary person.
How's Paula's family? You know
Paula's family struggles like any family. This keeps them motivated to keep him in prison, but the date of her death is coming up, brings back memories. The holidays bring back memories. I mean, my God, Paula would have been 52 years old today.
It's just devastating. I want to thank you so much for joining us. His name is Mike Ramos. He is the DA in San Bernardino County. My name is Brad Pomerance, and this is Charter California Edition.
Who was the first governor given the power to veto decisions by California's parole board? Pat Brown, Jerry Brown, Ronald Reagan, or Pete Wilson? Pete Wilson was the first California governor given the power to veto parole decisions by the California Parole Board.
Welcome to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by John McMahon. He is the sheriff for San Bernardino County. He's running for re-election, or election, I guess you could say. You were appointed, and now you're running to take a full term. That election will be held in June 2014. So I want to speak with you about what I think is an innovative program. I know that San Bernardino County is one of the first counties to implement it, and it deals with taking county inmates and redirecting their efforts into fire and fire prevention, fire safety.
Yes, this is a huge program for us. You know, historically, prior to realignment, state inmates participated with CAL FIRE, or the former CDF, on fire crews. Well, we keep a number of those inmates now in our custody. We had the option of sending our inmates to the state prison system to participate in fire camps, or we could do it ourselves. We chose to partner with our county fire department to create our own fire crews in San Bernardino County.
And you were one of the first to do that.
Yes, one of the first counties.
And I have to think that given the pressure of realignment and the increase in prisoners coming down to county facilities, that to be able to get some prisoners out into the field would relieve that pressure. Correct me if I'm wrong, do they not also live off-site?
Yes, that will ultimately be what we'll do with our facility.
Okay.
In the beginning, they lived in the original part of the jail.
Okay.
But now we have a facility just a little bit north of our main jail in Glen Helen.
Got it.
Where we're going to house those inmates. They are partnered up with the county fire personnel. They are learning some incredible things, from CPR to first aid to clearing fire lines, and our folks have been deployed on several incidents throughout the county.
And I would presume that if they're serving time in county facilities, their offenses were already a lower level. And so the risks of having them out and about decrease.
Well, certainly. And we look at their background and we look at their current charge to make sure they're the ideal candidate for that program.
What I'm wondering is, can they take the skills that they learn and transfer them to an actual position, or does their conviction make that difficult?
Well, that is an excellent question, because that was the question I had before we started this program. And yes, even with a felony conviction, they can get a job in the federal firefighting agencies, as well as some contract agencies that fight wildland fires, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. They can certainly get a job in those agencies as well.
Could it be that we look to change rules and regulations to allow graduates of a program like this to be hired by CAL FIRE or San Bernardino Fire Department?
They've looked into that to some degree, but in addition, we're working with our public defender's office in our county, and there are some inmates that their felony convictions are eligible to be reduced to misdemeanors. That clears that hurdle for us.
But are they reduced before or after they participate in the fire program?
After.
Oh, you can do that?
Yes. After their conviction and after they've served their time, they can work with a public defender's office, and in certain circumstances, their felony can be reduced to a misdemeanor for the purposes of their criminal record and conviction.
I didn't know that. That is remarkable. Yes. And so, therefore, they could be eligible to be hired by CAL FIRE, correct?
Correct.
As San Bernardino County?
Correct, if they meet the criteria.
Right, of course.
Yes.
Do you know if that's happened?
They're working on it, and I don't have any specific examples of
enough.
that yet, but yes, we're headed in that direction.
Because I have to think, sir, that this is the exact type of program that the creators of realignment envisioned. That
Absolutely.
You want to get these folks, you know, since they are lower level offenders as it is, if you can get them a skill after they leave the prison system, their chance of recidivism is greatly reduced, no?
Certainly, and that's the goal. You know, our prisons and jails are full in this state. In our county jail system, we're releasing inmates early. So if we can figure out a way to break that cycle and reduce recidivism, we are in much better shape.
Tell us about some of the members of this crew. I guess there were 13. Correct. They were part of a 5-week program. Tell me about them. Did you get to meet them at all? Or?
I did. I have spent a number of different visits up there, visiting with those inmates and seeing what they're doing. First off, they fixed up the facility. A lot of them have
when you say the
construction
facility,
skills.
Meaning which facility?
Where they're living and the classrooms they're using. A lot of them have construction abilities, and they spend a lot of time fixing up where they're going to live and train. just an incredible group of men that are really committed to making a difference. And some of the stories that are just so impressive is when they're out fighting fires, and they've been deployed on a couple of fire incidents as well as sandbagging and helping folks during the recent floods. They were approached by citizens, and they were sincerely thanked for what they were doing. And these guys, for some of them, have never heard that in their life. We are truly, with this program, changing some lives.
Truly.
Significant.
I actually am getting a little choked up thinking about it. I can only imagine how it must feel for them to be able to serve others in such an important moment in time. I mean, fire.
Yes.
You know, one feels so vulnerable. And my guess is many of those that approached them may not have even realized that they were a part of an inmate crew.
That's right.
They just were appreciative that they were there.
That's right.
What's the training? How does the training go?
Well, they get partnered up with the fire personnel from County Fire, and they start with their basic classroom instruction on characteristics of fire, first aid, CPR, and then they actually start going out into the field, clearing fire lines, and then on a couple of occasions have been deployed on fires and flood incidents.
Do you intend to continue this program?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, we're going to expand it. We have 26 inmates in there now. And we have room for 90 inmates in the dormitory setting that we have set up at the North facility.
Who is the perfect candidate for this program? What's their makeup?
An inmate that has probably been incarcerated a number of times throughout their life.
Oh, really?
But have realized that it's time for a change. They really want to change their life and not come back to jail. They have participated in, whether it be AA or NA or life skills classes, but they truly want to make a difference, want to go back to their families and not come back to jail.
But if they've been incarcerated several times, I would have thought that would classify them as more of a flight risk or a risk in general. How do you figure out who's the right candidate? I understand they participate in programs, but that being said.
Well, we look at their background and make sure that they're not currently in for anything that would make us nervous, whether it be a sexual offense or a violent offense, anything like that.
If they're in county, lower level.
Generally speaking, yes, sir. And make sure that they have the interest in participating because it's voluntary. They don't have to participate in this program. But one of the incentives for these inmates to participate is they get much more freedom. They have the opportunity to be outside, not inside a dormitory or cell with maybe the younger, more violent inmates. They will do their best not to make a mistake because they know if they make a mistake in this program, they're back inside the jail with the other inmates.
And the success rate has been?
We've lost a couple, but out of the first 26, we've only lost 2.
Oh, that's
pretty
fantastic.
Successful.
No, that's huge. I want to talk about staffing generally away from this fire program. Obviously, San Bernardino County, the largest geographic county in the entire nation.
Yes.
Alaska doesn't count because they don't really have counties, so
go.
We'll just stay with the lower 48.
There you go.
Are you looking at increasing staff, given that the economy's turned around a bit, and there may be some funding?
Yeah, we absolutely know there's a need for additional deputy sheriffs, primarily in the unincorporated areas of our county. And as you indicated, we have a lot of ground to cover. And we don't have as many deputy sheriffs out there as we truly need. Well, in the last several months, we've been looking at our budget, and we've made some changes in the way we've spent some money on overtime and some other things. We were able to free up just over $3 million and fill 15 vacant deputy sheriff positions to put out into the county unincorporated area.
That's for real?
That's for real.
Have they been filled?
Yes.
Any more online for our viewers that may be watching?
The first 15 have been allocated. We had the first show up in January. The second wave are coming out in April, and the last wave of 5 will come out just before the end of the fiscal year in June.
So after that, though, could there be more slots either through attrition or otherwise?
There certainly could be. If we are able to find any more spare money within our existing budget, and as you know, the county's general fund is stressed as it is.
It is.
And there's probably no real likelihood that we're going to get any additional funding. So the only way I'll be able to add any additional deputy sheriffs is if we're able to find some spare money in our budget.
His name is John McMahon. He is the sheriff for San Bernardino County. My name is Brad Pomerance, and you are watching Charter California Edition.
What percentage of San Bernardino County is considered desert? 60, 70, 80, or 90%? 90% of San Bernardino County is classified as desert.
It's Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance, and we are joined by Rick Roelle. He is a candidate for the California State Assembly. He has held elective office. We'll speak about that in a moment. But I understand, before we start, that you went to high school with someone that we know well. Who was that?
Yeah, Sheriff John McMahon.
Who we just spoke with, and he is running for office now for Sheriff of San Bernardino County. He was appointed to that position. How does it feel, two guys from, was it Apple Valley High?
Apple Valley High School, yeah. Back in the 70s and 80s, it was a real small town up there. It was about 10,000 people. Now Apple Valley is about 80,000. So everybody knew everybody, everybody's families. My sisters ran around with John.
Oh, that's great.
And it was just a wide open Wild West up there back in the day.
And apparently everyone still knows you pretty well in Apple Valley, because you ran successfully for city council twice, 2004, 2008, and you set a town record for the most votes received by a council member.
That's right.
How'd you do that? They didn't know you in high school. Must have been.
Yeah, it was just being an honest guy, and I'd been around for a while, and I did a lot of my law enforcement career in Apple Valley in the high desert, and that's right. Nobody has ever gotten more votes, either in Apple Valley or any city up there, for that matter, than myself.
And so you mentioned law enforcement. I guess John McMahon's your boss now.
John has been my supervisor for a while now, yes.
He's your boss. You are a deputy sheriff in the Barstow Station.
A lieutenant.
A lieutenant.
Yes.
I guess the generic title is deputy sheriff, but you have the title of lieutenant.
Everybody underneath the sheriff is actually considered a deputy.
I like it. Okay, well stated. So tell me, what is your role as lieutenant? What does that mean?
Well, lieutenant is a manager,
I see.
And it's called like the executive officer of the station. So I'm the second in command, and I run the day-to-day operations of the Barstow Station. I supervise the detective division and the day-to-day operations. So,
and I presume, given that San Bernardino County is the largest geographic county in the country, that your station also covers a very wide area.
Oh, absolutely. We go from Barstow all the way to State Line, Nevada.
Wow.
All the way almost to the Colorado River. And then we go Kern County line, which is Death Valley. So it's a huge area. It would take, to drive from one portion to the other, would take several hours.
I can only imagine the amount of ground that you have covered. And I would presume that much of that ground is included in the 33rd Assembly District, in which you seek.
Absolutely. It's it's over half of it.
Okay, tell us about the 33rd.
The 33rd district is the largest geographic area in the state for assembly district.
Got it.
It starts all the way from the top of the Cajon Pass, all the way to State Line, Nevada, all the way to the Colorado River, Arizona line, all the way to the Kern County Death Valley line, and all the way to almost 29 Palms. And it includes the mountains, Big Bear, Lake Arrowhead area too. So it's huge.
So even though you presumably would represent the same number of people that a member from Los Angeles would, who has maybe 10 square miles, it's densely populated, and so it's a very significant area.
Absolutely. And the big populations are in the Victor Valley area, Victorville, Apple Valley.
Right.
And then the rest of it is very rural.
Right.
But it is huge, and there's a lot of different issues out there.
And I want to speak about the high desert, because we know that during the last decade, the high desert, I mean, you said it, Apple Valley went from 10,000 to 80,000, and the high desert went through explosive growth. But when the recession hit, boy, did it hit the Victor Valley area and the entire high desert.
Oh, absolutely.
Devastating. I remember a couple of years ago, the Los Angeles Times ran a series of articles about Hesperia, and how homes had been going in Hesperia for $500,000, and a year or two later, $125,000 for the same home.
Right.
Talk to me about your community, how it did and how it's doing now.
Well, you're absolutely right, Brad. Back when the market crashed, the housing prices crashed, the unemployment skyrocketed, but it has made a comeback. Homes have increased up to 30 to 40% in some areas.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing, though? I mean, you don't want it to go too fast.
No, it's good, though, because people have equity in their homes, and they feel more comfortable to spend money and get back into the workplace and things. But it has, and it's a very conservative district, too. People there, they like government, but they don't want to have government run their lives.
I see.
And it's a very unique district, because people that live in, let's say this in the more densely populated areas of Victorville have different issues than if you live in, let's say, Newberry Springs on a 50-acre alfalfa ranch.
So as you're campaigning, what is the resident of Victorville saying versus the resident of Newberry Springs?
Well, the resident of Newberry Springs wants, they don't want government intrusion, but they want representation. And they don't want regulations to using their land for what they want. And in the areas such as Victorville, they're looking for good representation, they want good public safety, and they want a good community where business can grow and be viable. What's
interesting is the person holding the seat now, a good friend, Tim Donnelly, good friend of mine. I love interviewing him. I have no idea if you're friends with him, but I think he's a hoot.
I've known Tim for about 6 years.
Okay, yeah. And so I think it's suffice it to say he's a colorful character. He's very well known throughout the state. He's well known nationwide. He's on Fox News often. I would presume that would be an interesting predecessor to have.
Absolutely, yes, yes. Well, my style would be different than Tim's too. I would be more in tune to support more variety of issues out there. Tim's big issue, obviously, is Second Amendment rights and immigration, which are very important to the people of the state of California. But I think there's so many more areas of concern for people than those. I mean, I'm a big gun rights supporter, having been a police officer for 32 years. Carrying a gun is like putting on a pair of shoes. It's just something that you always do, and it's second nature. But the public has a right to own weapons and carry weapons if they're not convicted felons, so I would support that.
What other issues are important to you? You work in law enforcement, so presumably you would go to Sacramento with some expertise in the area of law enforcement. I think about realignment, which has presented challenges for both counties and the state. What would your priorities be?
Well, absolutely, Brad. Public safety is a huge issue for me. And this Assembly Bill 109, where the realignment and the release of inmates into our communities, I think has been devastating to the local neighborhoods. It's
been tricky. There's no question. I've spoken with many individuals, John McMahon, for example. You know, the challenge is Governor Brown's under federal court order to decrease the size of the prison population. So it can be, you know, he doesn't want to be held in contempt. He also he says he doesn't want to release prisoners early. And so this realignment plan came in. But what that's done is it's sent lower level offenders, we'll call them that, to county facilities that may or may not be prepared.
Well, the county facilities absolutely aren't prepared to hold people for up to 15 years.
And expand on that. I mean, because that's a key point. The intent had been that folks that were lower level offenders getting sentences of 3 years or less would be in the counties. But
that hasn't occurred. We have inmates that have been sentenced up to 15 years in the county facilities. Now, what do you do with somebody for 15 years? Because the county facilities are basically just individual cells or day rooms, okay, and a small little recreation yard. Okay, the average stay is less than 90 days for a county inmate. And now we're having to release, and I'm sure you've spoken to Sheriff McMahon about the same thing. We're forced to release people who would normally be in custody for lesser charges to hold the more serious people. When those people get released on the less serious charges, they go out and commit less serious crimes such as car theft and burglaries and things like that. And there was no room to hold those types of inmates.
It's been really difficult. There have been attempts to try to remedy that one issue. They have not been successful, but Governor Brown was miraculously able to get the federal court to extend the deadline to decrease the population. So could it be that if, should you get to Sacramento, you can work on an issue like that, you know, trying to reform the question of prison sentences in counties?
Oh, absolutely. And you can't put the blame on Governor Brown for this because he inherited this. Has been an ongoing problem for many of from way back, and it's just a lack of jail space. And once that happens, if you look at, there's pictures of, you know, certain state prisons, they're using the recreation gymnasiums and they're triple bunked in there and they're crammed in there like sardines. So obviously this is not just something that happened overnight.
To be continued. His name is Rick Roelle. He's a candidate for the California State Assembly. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.